Hi, everyone. This is Paulo Fosso, and I'm here with Vincent Baker, author of Dogs in the Vineyard and Apocalypse World. Hi, Vincent, and thanks for being with us.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
It's been 20 years since you first wrote Kill Puppies for Satan, the game that launched your career as a game designer. Someone say you did it because you got frustrated with the classical game system, like many of us. Today, what's your relationship with titles like Dungeons and Dragons?
I haven't played Dungeons and Dragons since I want to say second edition AD&D in college. If I were to run Dungeons and Dragons today, it would be Moldvay Basic 1980 Basic D&D. When I got started 20 years ago with Kill Puppies for Satan, etc., Dungeons and Dragons wasn't sort of a going game, and nobody took Dungeons and Dragons very seriously as a game. It was seen as old fashioned and something to avoid association with as a game creator. And so I think now I would never have predicted that Dungeons and Dragons would turn around in those 20 years the way it did. I think that Wizards of the Coast has done heroic work turning that brand around.
Sure. So you revolutionized the RGP world more than once. You became an industry innovator. How does it feel to be the father of the PBTA system, which is the spine of several games, many of them popular, like cults?
It feels pretty great. Like, I'm proud of it.
Yeah, I can believe that.
And I need to say right up front that I'm the co-creator of that. Meg Baker
Right.
co-created Apocalypse World and co-launched the Powered by the Apocalypse PBTA scene with me. Not only the number of games, but sort of the personal intimacy of so many of the games. They're really expressive games. They aren't, so many of them are really expressive games, really personal games that people create. And couldn't be more delighted. It's wonderful. It's
Right.
really fun. It's really fun to see.
Yeah, that's awesome. I read about your say yes or roll principle. How did you get to it?
Roll the dice or say yes is what the text says. That's from Dogs in the Vineyard. And the context that appears in is a chapter about playing toward conflict instead of playing to avoid conflict. In a lot of the games I played in the 90s, we would endlessly circle conflicts and endlessly skirt conflicts. And for Dogs in the Vineyard, that game only works if you rush into conflict. And so the purpose of that rule, roll the dice or say yes, is it gets the GM out of the way of the non-conflicts. So if they're like, is there a blacksmith in town? You say yes. You say, we go to the blacksmith. You say yes. You never put delaying tactics in the way of the conflict. But then as soon as there is a conflict, as soon as you say, okay, we want the blacksmith to tell us what's going on, and the blacksmith doesn't want to, that's when you roll dice. When I wrote those words, I never expected them to become
Popular,
to be taken up
Right.
as some kind of slogan outside of that game design context.
Okay, right. Okay, let me ask you, your first biggest success has been Dogs in the Vineyard. This is not a notice system only. The title introduced a series of moral dilemmas of a certain weight in the RPG world. Can games help us thinking about the real world and maybe pushing some important social changes?
A game makes you think about your relationships with each other, or makes you think about moral action in the world. I think it does it by putting you in contact with people, not by confronting you with the game design. Kill Puppies for Satan, my first game. That game does not confront you with moral. I mean, you do terrible things. You kill puppies for Satan. You do all sorts of horrible things in that game. But what that game does socially is you say the worst things you can imagine. These terrible things come out of your mouth when you're playing that game, and your friends still like you. And that is a really powerful moment. Most of the meaningful value that comes out of a game is in your relationship with your fellow players, not in your relationship with the game. That's what I think about that.
Right. That's great. Your latest effort under Hollow Hills is about a fairy circus. Haven't tried it yet, but can't wait to. Please tell us a little bit about how you came up with this idea.
Well, one of the first games that I ever made notes for was about fairies in college in the 90s. And one of the first games that Meg started working on was about fairies, probably around the same time. And so the idea of a game about fairies has been in our thinking for as long as we've known each other, practically. I published a game called Midsummer Wood, which is about a human being who sneaks into a fairy party. And then at some point, the idea of a fairy circus kind of coalesced. I remember when it came to me, I was at PAX talking to Stephen Dewey about his game, To Serve Her Wintry Hunger. And
which is in response to one of our games.
It is, which is, he created in response to Meg's game. What's the name of your game, Meg?
Which one?
The one
You don't remember.
I'm glad.
This is
I'm
funny.
glad I'm not the only one who can't remember.
Well, I've just been talking about a different Holly and the Ivy.
Holly and the Ivy is the name.
All
of it.
right.
And but ultimately you're asking us where the ideas come from. I don't know. They're floating around, and then you're a lightning rod, and the lightning strikes.
Okay. One last question. How is it being with a game designer wife?
It's fantastic. It's fantastic.
I can believe that.
Game design is the only thing we fight about. Like, we don't fight about money. We don't fight about parenting. But the process. Meg's coming
Well,
over.
you keep looking at me.
Sure.
Lean in.
Hi, Meg. Nice to meet you.
Hello.
Hi.
I know there's not a good mic setup for this and all that, but
That's
you
okay.
keep looking off screen at me, and like we're so used to doing a lot of things together and interviews together. And if you're going to get to the point where you say we only fight about game design, which is true, it's a joint effort. We do only really fight about game design because it's an effort to get clear from one brain to the other brain, like working together to raise kids or deal with the house or whatever else.
Sure.
There are enough external pieces of that, of like, this is how this works. Oh, we have to fix this thing, or let's adjust this here. But when I'm trying to communicate an idea of like, no, it's like this,
Right.
We
That's
also have a
interesting.
really good 30 some odd years now of practicing communication all the time.
Right.
And being like, oh, okay, that's not what I meant. Let me try again, instead of putting it on the other person of like, you don't understand. It's like, oh, wait a minute. I have not communicated clearly what I'm trying to communicate.
Yeah.
Which helps us in game design because we have to communicate that to people who want to play the game of like, so we have the constant process of with each other and with our kids
Right.
of aiming for that clarity while keeping the tone of whatever game it is that we're trying to make.
I was going to say that one of the things about being married to even an artist, not just a game designer, is that
Sure.
we'll be watching a movie or something, and I'll go, oh crap, I got to go work. I got to go write. And Meg totally gets it. She is not offended that I'm walking out in the middle of, a movie that we're
Whatever.
watching or whatever. And so I know some people who have partners who are very frustrated with their creative process, and we don't.
Right.
So that's
But,
really good.
Understanding that we have our independent creative process as well as our joint creative process gives us a lot of strength in how we design. There's games that, it's like, oh, that's one of Meg's games. Oh, that's one of Vincent's games. And then there's a lot of games that are ours together. because we have that piece, you know.
Right. That's amazing. That's amazing. So we got to the end of this short conversation, guys. Do you want to add something maybe about your upcoming projects, both?
Well, we are just very, very, very excited, and by that I mean exhausted and desperate to get Under Hollow Hills out the door. We have the print proof at home right now.
It's so pretty!
And it's very pretty, but it's sure not a whole print run. And so we need to, we're in the process of going through the proof, revising the proof, and then and then it goes to the printer. But
Right.
we just can't wait for that to be done.
That's great. So thank you guys for being with us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
I hope to be able to talk with you again soon.
That would be fantastic. Say the word.